Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started. For those watching, I'm Shaka Mitchell, and this is the Tennessee Federation for Children, and you are really in for, I think, a treat because you're going to hear from a great school leader here in Nashville and also some students as we start the school year. And so let me just start by welcoming Kalee Barbis and saying hello. Kalee Barbis from Templeton Academy.
Hi, I'm Kalee Barbis. I'm from Templeton Academy.
So Kalee, I want to be mindful of time because it is like in the middle of the school day and you've got an office full of socially distanced students. And so we want to be mindful of time, but for folks watching, give me the quick, like 2-second or two sentence rather picture on what's Templeton Academy.
So Templeton Academy is a small micro private school located in downtown Nashville. We serve grades 5 through 12.
Yeah, grades 5 through 12. And I think something that I know is that many of your students, and this is year 2 for the school, right? Yeah. And many of your students came from, you got a pretty diverse backgrounds.
So I would say about 1/3 of our kids come from public schools, a little more than 1/3 of our kids come from private schools, and a little less than 1/3 have come from homeschooling. And we are located in downtown Nashville, and we're really centered on 3 things. So the first thing is deeper learning we do to our blocks and projects. The second thing would be our core advisory in our community. And the third thing is using the city as a classroom. Obviously, that doesn't really apply as much now, but like we did do a panel this past Friday and we had guest speakers from all over the country. And so that is the perk of, bringing the city to the classroom when we can't go out.
Yeah. So we'll definitely get to that here in a sec. I mean, we're recording this on August 24th and streaming it on August 24th. And so, unless you've been under a rock, you know that we are in the midst of this global pandemic. And what that means here in Nashville, I think we're still in some iteration of phase 2, maybe hybrid phase 2, phase 3 or something like that. But that combined with the fact that in Tennessee, school's actually underway and has been for several weeks, right? So there's a whole host of changes and like newness that has brought. So I wonder if you can hit, like, what does this even look like? What does modified phase 2 school look like?
Yeah, so it was really important to us that we could be in person if at all possible, but it was also really important to us that we could keep our kids safe. And so with that, could we keep them 6 feet apart? Could we keep masks on? Like, did we even know how a 5th grader would do with that? And I do have 3 8th graders with us who have done an excellent job so far. I think they will share the hardest part is being separated by their cohorts, but I'll let them get into that. And so for us, we decided that we were going to go back hybrid. So what that means for us is we have 50% of our students in the building at any time. On Mondays and Wednesdays, we have middle schoolers here. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, we have high schoolers here. And then we do alternating Fridays, which is a cross-curricular programming day. And so they've experienced their first one. And then we also added to our team, T. Wilson, who's our director of admissions. And so it's been an interesting way to come back, and we've had to change the way we do admissions and all sorts of things. So
yeah, for sure. Well, let me quickly say hello to Ms. T. Wilson. I see you on the call down there, and what a time to become the new admissions director at a school, huh? So Ms. Wilson, as you're unmuting yourself for a sec, I'm curious, what's that been like from, an admission standpoint? What are the sorts of questions that you're getting maybe from parents who are interested in Templeton Academy?
Okay, well, now this is my second week, 8th day. So a lot of
You're already like from the frying pan into the fryer, right? So, yeah.
Exactly. A lot of the questions are just about who are we? You know, initially just building awareness about the kind of school Templeton is and why we see ourselves as different as an alternative for families in Nashville. I haven't had a lot of inquiries about our model for COVID-19 from potential families, but a lot of our families here are very aware of Kalee's 20-page COVID response plan to make sure that our kids and our students and our staff are safe at all times. I think more than anything, parents just want to make sure that their children aren't falling behind, that they aren't missing anything, that they're still getting the same quality education, even in the midst of a global pandemic, social unrest, and all of the other things that are happening to us in 2020. The children still need to be a priority and still learn and still stay on the same track for success. So that's our priority as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kalee, so T referenced this kind of reopening plan and document that you had, and I took a look at it, and I've got to say, I found it to be really thoughtful. And you know, I just wonder, like, you've put this plan together. What are the things that, because I know you some as an educator, and you know, before the pandemic, thankfully. I mean, what are the things that were kind of initially like sort of keeping you up at night that you wanted to get right in this plan?
I think the number one thing we wanted to get right was how could we do this well for students? It was really jarring for us. We went home on a Wednesday. All of their projects, so we're a project-based school. We do a major exhibition every quarter. Every project was set up. This building looked like a museum, and then we never came back. And so the number one thing for us was, or for me, is how could we make sure that this community, which is really special, carry over even in the time of COVID, and what does that look like, and how can we put students first, and how can we care about the whole child first? Because if we're making sure they feel a part of something, they get to see their friends, then like academics and all that other stuff will follow. But like T mentioned, like we're in the middle of a pandemic and racial unrest, and like your whole person has to come first. And if we can get that right and we can get the safety elements right, then we can do that. I think also when creating the plan, you know, we spent over 20 pages on it, and there are a lot of details like, did you fill out your screener? Did you take your temperature? Can you use the upstairs case and the downstairs case? But at the end of the day, it's, do you feel safe when you come here? And do you feel like you're safe enough that you can even focus on that other stuff? And so that's been the big priority.
Yeah. And I'm curious, I mean, in thinking about all the procedures and kind of protocols that probably students and faculty as well, maybe family, if families coming into the building have to go through. I mean, can you just touch on a couple of those things? Like what are some of the safety protocols? Like how does that look like practically? Because, you know, for folks who may not know, we've got a statewide audience. You've got folks watching who are 100% in person, who are their district is 100% remote. You've got districts, Memphis, our largest school district in the state, hasn't even started yet. So they're really all over the place. So I'd love, like, what does that look like practically for you?
So the first thing for us is every kid fills out a screener. It goes through the COVID like symptoms, and it's just like a daily reminder of like you're signing in with the community that you know you've been safe and that you don't currently have any symptoms or anything like that. And so they do the temperature to fill out, and then they sign it and go in. I think this group is mixed and they can tell you, but I think most of our students, especially once they're in high school, fill out the form themselves, which again is just like another reminder of that. The other thing we do is we take students' temperatures every day as they walk in. And then we have paw prints that are all 6 feet apart, so like students can see where they are. And then we have students seated 6 feet apart. But for us, the big thing is like the visual cues, because like today I was working 5th grade lunch and I was like, hey, do you need anything? One of the 5th graders was like, I could really go for a hug. And I was like, let's do a virtual hug. And he said, like, my friend is in my pod, could they hug me? And it's like, well, not right now, but like, let's do a virtual hug. And I think it's like those things that really pull at you, right? Because like, as an educator, like you want to meet that kid where they are, and it's just different now.
Yeah. Well, maybe because you were gracious enough to engage some of your 8th graders, I think you said. So we've got a couple of your students who are on. I'm curious if there's one of your students, and maybe if you would at least introduce yourself with your first name, if that's all right. If you could each go. I see you numbered there on my screen anyway, 1, 2, 3. So maybe you can go that way, introduce your first name, and then I'll come back to you with a quick question.
I'm Kai.
Hey Kai, thanks for being with us. And Kai, were you part of Templeton Academy last year?
Yes, I was.
All right, great. All right, number 2.
I'm Andrew Esquivel.
Andrew. I think I heard an Andrew there. Yeah. Kalee. Oh, let's see. We may still need Andrew. Andrew, you may need to go back on mute. I will say this actually makes me feel, as a middle-aged guy, this makes me feel great when the kids. Usually it's me who's the one messing up the technology. Andrew, no shame to that at all. Thanks for being with us. And then what about number 3?
My name's Carlos.
I think the problem is everybody's distant but in a room. Yeah. All right. So let me come back. Is that right, Kalee?
Yeah, but we can separate rooms really quickly. If you'll give us like 30 seconds, maybe ask T a question, then we can take care of that.
No, that's no problem at all. Yeah, so I will ask T a question. So one of the things, T, I mean, what's it been like? Because obviously we talked so much about student safety, but what are some of the things that you've noticed as a faculty member, like that have been maybe particular challenges to this kind of teaching in this pandemic time?
Well, I will say I feel very safe here. I have sickle cell anemia, so I'm immunocompromised. And so I thought about all of that before I even decided to come into the building. But Kalee was so meticulous about making sure everybody felt safe that I do feel very safe. And I'm one of those people that hadn't left my house since March 12th. So for me to come out, it had to be a safe environment. The thing that's been most challenging for me, I'm originally from New Orleans, Louisiana. We are very touchy-feely people. We like to hug you, kiss you, hold hands. And so that has been, like Kalee said, the hardest thing is building that connection. And if a child asks for a hug, or if you want to sit next to someone at lunch and you're thinking about this invisible virus that's out there that could cause someone great harm. So I would say that's the hardest part, is just touch, and I think that's something that we're never going to take for granted again in this country, is being able to just touch someone.
Absolutely. That's really well put. I think that's right. Yeah.
We're all in separate rooms, so now you should be able to ask us questions.
Okay, so we're in separate rooms. So I wonder if one of the students, particularly a student who was at Templeton Academy last year. I mean, Kalee mentioned that things sort of shut down in March, maybe after the tornado. I don't know, but I know in Nashville that affected a lot of schools, and my own kids even. So what were some of the initial just impressions coming back, like first to the start of the school year, impressions coming back? Did it feel strange? Were you glad for it? I'd love to just get those initial impressions. How about number 2 there? Yeah.
All right, let's go in reverse order. So Kyler, will you kick us off? All right. You'll need to move it down just a little so we can see your face. Thank you for moving rooms.
I was kind of excited to get back to school, because to be honest, online really wasn't working for me personally. So I'm just glad to be back in this building. A lot of great memories, and I love it here.
let me ask you a follow-up really quickly, because you said that online wasn't really working for you. And I think that's, that's good. What didn't you love about it, or what wasn't working for you? What did you miss maybe?
Some of the work that the teachers were giving us, it seemed like really hard to explain online. Like it felt like if they would have gave us it like in real life when people give you demonstrations, it felt like if they would give you a demonstration, it would have been way more easier.
Yeah, I totally get that. And I think particularly in the spring, it just, everything in the education world just felt like triage. You know, I mean, it was, no one had adapted lesson plans to go from in-person to online. It just happened overnight, right? And so I think the hope is that things are a little bit different in the fall. Now, Kalee, are any of your students doing remote?
Yeah, we are. So not in their grade, but in our 7th grade, we actually have 4 kids who are on full-time distance learning. And so we Zoom them into normal class. Today I was in 7th grade and they're doing an experiment on pollution. And so it involved like squares and Vaseline and measuring it. And the Zoom students were doing it too. They didn't have all the supplies necessarily. And so we had to be like, okay, what could work if you didn't have Vaseline? They came up with peanut butter, but it is just different. And so we'll report back on their experiment next week, but we did allow that option to families who have health concerns.
Yeah, that's great. Maybe let's continue with our second student. What's been, maybe a slightly different question though, how have you found all these new like safety procedures? Has it been really disruptive or distracting, or what's the classroom experience like now?
It's a little bit difficult because I'm just like not used to that. But I mean, it's just been nice to be able to get to school, and it's been helpful for my learning.
Yeah, and when you say, you know, kind of distracting, like which part of it? Is the time that it takes, or is it like just the fact of wearing a mask, the simple fact of wearing a mask? I know that I find to be distracting sometimes and kind of tough. Or like, are there specific things that you think, oh, this is the thing that I didn't know would be challenging, but is?
I think that the 6 feet apart rule, I agree with T. Like it's different, definitely.
Yeah, lacking that closeness. Yeah, that makes sense. All right, well, let's continue with the third student. I mean, sort of back to that you know, first question a little bit. Thinking about last year, how does that maybe final week compare of the prior school year compare to what you're walking into, and how have you seen the school maybe adapt?
It's just kind of unusual, I guess, especially since we didn't know that would have been our last day. We all walk out, we're like, see you after spring break, never come back. Some people aren't even here anymore. It's just unusual, and you'll find yourself doing like normal things you would do, like getting too close to somebody, and you have to think for a second and be like, oh, wait, gotta back up. So little things. Yeah.
Do you feel like most of the differences, do they feel more in kind of the social realm or in the academic space?
A little bit of both, maybe, especially since we're not always here. So the days we are online, sometimes it's a little tricky, but I'm kind of used to it now from having to do it last year. But it's more of a social thing, I think.
Yeah. I am curious as to whether or not any of the students have younger siblings. I don't know if any do, but Kalee, I'm wondering differences that you're maybe seeing with some of your older kids versus your younger ones.
Yeah. So all of these three students, I think you're all the youngest, right? In your families, or an only? Yeah. So I would say like I think the biggest thing is like energy level and what students want to do. So for example, like on middle school days now, like the building just has this like hyper energy and they're like, oh, we can't go outside today. Let's go play ping pong. Or like you'll go into their projects and you'll see like a fifth grader like moving around, and their projects that they build are like really big and super hands-on, versus like our high schoolers are very chill. They're so grateful to be back that they don't even like I think blink twice when it comes to asking to be separated, because they're just so glad to be back. And like we'll have all of high school outside at once, and they'll like self-separate. And so I think there is a difference cognitively between like recognizing it and then like living it. But it's also different. Like Andrew's coming to you from our traditional dark room right now. Like we were supposed to start the year with CrossFit, and we partner with a CrossFit gym, and it's like no one's going to a gym right now. So we switched it out for photography. And while that room can normally have like 5 or 6 kids at a time, there's only 2 or 3 at a time when it's being utilized. So
yeah, boy. I mean, it's like the big and little ways. I think this is affecting the school day in big and little ways for sure. Yeah. If you were, and we're coming up on sort of maybe just a few more questions, because I want to be, again, mindful of y'all's time. But, you know, Kalee, I mentioned that there are many schools that have not gone back yet. And maybe are 100% remote. We'll find out in Nashville tomorrow at least what the next phase of the plan is. Probably schools will be out another, call it 6 weeks, will be remote. But when they go back, it's not going to be back to normal, right? It's going to be this sort of hybrid. Where would you, if you were talking to kind of colleagues around the state in other districts and other schools, like now knowing what you know, is there something that you could have focused on that maybe you didn't, or are there things you went like, ooh, it's a really good thing that I thought about this aspect, because that ended up being critical on day one? I know there's a lot there. I know you wrote 20 pages about this too, by the way. So they could just read the document. But
yeah, no, I think the biggest thing is the prioritizing relationships. And I think you can do that whether you're on Zoom or in person. I mean, we've done lots of games where it's like, you know, show me your fridge, go, or like who can find 10 objects fast, you know, and building that community and giving students a space to bring their whole selves. We talk a lot about how can you bring your whole self and be brave even when you feel uncomfortable. And like, I recognize it is a privilege, the fact that we are getting to be back, and it is something our families are opting into, and it's something that we've decided is really important as a community. And so I would just encourage other educators to do the same, of like, you know, putting relationships first. And then I think the second part of that is, while things are different, like maybe this different is better. And so by that, I mean, like, are we, like last week, my son got sent home sick. He did not have COVID. He had a runny nose, but it meant that like he couldn't be at school, right? And so like I came in for arrival, I left and worked from home with him, and then I came back and I didn't feel like that sense of guilt of like, oh my gosh, I'm not at school for these 2 hours, because like I know the team had it. And it's like, well, maybe we should have always honored teachers as like whole people, and maybe we should have always made that space for them, and it shouldn't have taken a pandemic to like even create like my own, like, I don't feel guilty for not being on campus for 2 hours. Like I need to put my family first right now, right? And so I think that's really important. And then I think that the third thing is like, it's okay that things are different. And like for example, we did an egg drop last year. All 3 of them worked on an egg drop this morning. They brought their own supplies, and like that's okay too. But like those things that you think can only happen in the classroom, like they can happen at home. We just have to give kids time and space to do that.
Yeah, boy, those are really, really all good insights, all good. I don't want to call them lessons yet, because it will take us a while to internalize those, you know. Well, let me kind of end with sort of a lightning round to the students. I mean, give me one thing. Kalee talked about maybe we can get not just back to normal, but back to, you know, better than normal. which I think is really my hope for schools across the state, is that normal for a lot of students wasn't really working, may not have been that great, may not have been innovative. And so we may be able to use this as an opportunity to get back to better than normal. So to the students, I'm curious, what's been a bright spot in this time, particularly with returning to school? I know it's different. I know that the dark, the CrossFit space is now the dark room. I think, frankly, I would have liked that. I might have preferred the dark room over the CrossFit space, but what's been a bright spot for the students that you look at and you go, it's not all bad. Here's something that's positive. Maybe let's go in descending order, or is that ascending, from starting with 1 to 3?
Just having a sense of normalcy, I guess. Just even if everything isn't normal, it's more normal than it was before. I mean, a few months ago, I didn't get to see anybody really, so this is a step, I guess.
Yeah, a step in the right direction. I'm sure my kids, who I can hear thundering around my house right now, are also eager to have classmates that look more like their size than me and their mom. Some return to normalcy would be nice. Yeah, what about the second student?
I agree. I like the more consistency, and I also like the that I have a little bit more time for like myself, like personal time, like because we get out of school earlier on the Zoom days at home, so I have a little bit more time.
Yeah, that's great. I like that time management piece. That's great. Okay, and what about our third student?
I agree with Andrew said, more personal time for myself, but yeah, more personal time is a really great thing for me, because I usually when I get home, I spend a lot of time doing a lot of work and stuff like that usually, but personal time is a great thing for me.
Great.
And I chose the 3 of them because I heard from all 3 of their parents over the summer about like how much they missed hanging out. But on Friday after school, we're downtown, so a lot of our kids go over to Rocketown, and that's pretty normal. And so during carpool, I looked for their parents and I didn't see them. And then I saw the 3 of them coming out, and they were walking over to Rocketown, and yes, they all had their mask on. But for me, I think it was one of my first moments of being like, okay, things are going to be okay. We're coming back from this. And so rather than just select one of them, I was like, oh, we should just put all 3 of them on the panel. So thanks for letting them jump in. And thank you guys for being willing to go along with me. So.
Yeah, no, thanks to the students for sure. T, very nice to meet you, and welcome to Templeton Academy. And Kalee, as always, thanks for the conversation. There are tons of things that I look forward to talking to you about, offline even. I mean, what an interesting time in education this has been. Something you said that is going to stick with me for a while is continuing to think about how to give faculty, teachers more flexibility. Yeah, this stuff we probably should have been doing for decades, right? And it shouldn't be this question about, do I go to school or can I be a parent? That's a terrible choice to have to make. So I'll continue to think about that. Well, what are you looking forward to this coming week? It's only Monday here in Nashville. So Kalee, what are you looking forward to this week at Templeton?
So let's see. We have our first high school Friday this week. We also have our virtual open house coming up. So that's exciting. But tomorrow we have our first staff PD since we've started. I mean, we've only been into school for a week, but it will be nice to see everyone's face, even if it is on Zoom. So
awesome. Well, congratulations. Thanks for doing what you are and all you have to keep kids safe and adults safe and to keep them learning and on track. I'm glad we could check in with you after week 1. The building's still standing, so everybody's looking good. So
And we haven't had to close down yet. So fingers crossed that that continues.
Yes, that's huge. That's a big praise. So, well, thank you so much. And thanks everybody for watching. Continue to check out this series. We'll be doing these conversations weekly with school leaders, parents around the state, just talking about what back to school looks like amidst this COVID and trying to find all the bright spots. So thanks and have a great day.
Bye. Thank you.